Hello everybody, welcome to my latest video. I'm having a bit of a rough time with new games at the moment, mainly because I can't afford them, and also because there aren't many coming out that I'm actually excited for. So I've been on a bit of a retro trip recently, and I don't mean retro to the extent where we're looking at 8-bit graphics or anything like that. I mean retro as in games that I haven't played for a while, that ultimately I was excited about when they first came out, and as you can probably see from what's going on screen, I've recently been jumping back into Anthem, and I thought I would just do a quick video on giving you guys an update, if you're interested, of what it's like playing in 2025 of all times. Now, for those who don't know, and if you don't know, A, why have you not watched my previous videos on my previous channel? B, how do you not know, because this was massive news for quite a long time? And C, you must be hiding under a rock. Anthem died on release. It was overly hyped by the developers. They showed off some, how should I say, gameplay in inverted commas that wasn't actually gameplay. It was more gameplay on a rig that no one would be able to afford in any way, shape or form, so they had to downgrade the, not just graphics, but also the amount of stuff on screen quite significantly for technology at the time. Interestingly, if they released it today, it probably would include all of the stuff that they initially had. But anyway, that's the history. Getting back to what is it like in 2025, I was ultra hyped when this game was first announced. It was kind of exactly what I was after, a new take on the looter-shooter platform. There had been quite a few at this time. There had been Destiny, there had been the first two Borderlands, so it was ripe for a new game in the genre. And it's a genre that I really do like, so as I say, I was exceptionally hyped. And for me, strangely enough, I wasn't that disappointed. Of course it could have been better, don't get me wrong, but I don't really pay much attention to release trailers when they're announced at gaming conventions, mainly because they've put the trailer together specifically for that convention rather than a demo. But also, they tend to oversell things, and it's a marketing ploy. It's a bit like when you go into a restaurant and you see the picture of the hamburger or whatever it is on the display. When you get the food, it's nothing like it, and that's because that hamburger in that picture has been specially designed to entice the audience. That's the way I see game trailers. We've had it numerous times before. We had it for Killzone 2. On the PlayStation 3. That looked absolutely insane when it was first announced on the trailer, and although the game that came out was absolutely brilliant in my opinion, it was nowhere near as good as that trailer originally said it was going to look. Anthem was the same. They had dynamic events in the world that, you know, it was supposed to just happen depending on what was going on in the world. You had masses of people running around. You had all sorts of things going on that never actually made it into the game. That being said, I don't think that's why the game failed. I think people were expecting something ultra impressive to the extent where it was basically another world. And that was not what this developer was known for. I'm talking about in the multiplayer category. They are known for world building when it's a single player narrated game, and that narrative is extremely strong. I personally found the story in Anthem pretty decent. It wasn't the best, but for a shooter, a looter shooter as well, it was a pretty decent story. I did like some of the characters. In fact, I liked all of the characters, including the player character, and I think it did a good job of world building. I would have liked to have seen more expansion on that story, if I'm being perfectly honest. Yes, some of the acting was a little bit wooden, some of the facial expressions weren't great, but this is PS4 era, and I think it did a pretty decent job. That being said, this game's main draw was the gameplay and the loot, and looting initially at least was quite poor. I'm saying that from a general perception point of view, mainly because I was raised on the Diablo 4 environment, where finding the really good stuff took you months and months and months, not the instant gratification that we have today. So for those people who didn't really want instant gratification, the loot drops weren't actually that bad. What was bad was the lack of ways of getting it. So you basically had to farm the expeditions, and there were, I think, 4 of them to begin with, or 3, and that was realistically all you could do. Now, that being said, I think they could have done a little bit more with that, and they did start seasons, which gave another way of doing it. They only ever did 1 season, which was annoying because the game kind of got cancelled, but as you can see from on screen, didn't stop being available. And as this is a live service game, these are still live servers. Even 3 years now, I think it is, after the game has been cancelled, the servers are still live and populated. I'm not sure this game's as dead as everyone thinks. But gameplay wise, this is still amazing, and a legendary just propped up, as you could see there. So we have a game where gameplay is super solid, we have a story which isn't too bad, we have graphics which for the time, looking at them even now, they are pretty decent. I'm not going to say they're world breaking because, you know, we have Unreal Engine 5 out now, which does take things to a new level, but you know, some of the mechanics in this game were really good. Cooling your jets down by going through water, or when you dive, as in dive from a high level in the sky down to sort of just before ground level, that dive, because you get extra speed and airflow, does cool the rockets on your jump pack. Things like that are really, really clever, and I wish you could see in more games, to be honest. But that being said, I just think gameplay wise in general, the flying is super satisfying. I'm glad that EA insisted that was put in the game. And the gunplay is, to my mind, really, really brilliant. I would say the skills outweigh it, but, you know, in games like this, that's always going to be the case, because this is really more of a RPG shooter. So, unlike some of the Borderlands games where the guns are pretty much everything and your skills go with the guns, your skills are tied to components that you find, and those components are specific to a class. So it's a bit of a different way of doing it, but those components are realistically the much better skills that you can use rather than just using your weapon. So all in all, I think gunplay and the flying really make this game something special, and it still feels really snappy even today. I mean, going back to some old games, the controls can sometimes feel a little bit, how can I say, horrible, but this is still looking and feeling really good. And what I do want to say, I mentioned before about the servers being not only still active but still populated. The little turquoise dots with the arrows on the screen indicate the players, and when I was playing there were 3 other players in the free play with me. Now free play only has space for 4 players, so this was a full server, and this is a game that's supposedly not available anymore. It's closed down. Now EA are still selling the premium currency for this, so if you do want to buy things in the store still has a rotation. There are still seasonal challenges that you can do. The season expedition or dungeon, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but I think it's something like I don't know, I'm going to call them expeditions, but basically they're the same as Destiny's raids in effect, but they don't last anywhere near as long, obviously. But they are, in essence, a get together with your friends and take on this challenge with a massive boss at the end situation. A strike, I suppose, is probably the closer one from Destiny. all in all, I think Anthem is a game that they should pick back up. I think the work that they were doing on Anthem 2.0, which included a new character leveling screen, so not just your javelin, which is basically your mech armor, but also the character inside that armor would get some skills. They were reworking the loot system, they were reworking a number of the core systems within the game, but not changing the core gameplay loop as such, which is, I think, where this game really shines. I think if they did that now and did a next-gen update, this game could actually be much closer to what was originally promised, where you could have your dynamic activities. And I think with games such as Dragon Age Veilguard not getting the sales or reviews that they were after, I have put a video out for that, by the way, and it's not as bad as I was led to believe. I'm not going to say it's the best or anywhere near the best in the Dragon Age series, but it's not as horrific as everyone made out. I think people just like to be overly critical on anything they see as potentially woke, and yes, there are some talk of trans characters and things like that in the game, but that is the world we live in, and although I don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on in that field, including trans people or people who are homosexual or anything like that, I don't see as a problem. We have to remember that BioWare's Dragon Age games and their other games have always included homosexual relationships, and when they first included those, even that was a little bit taboo to put into a game, so they are quite progressive in that situation. So I don't think including a trans character or misgendering somebody or things like that in the game is necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's not overly pushed. And that's the thing. If it's forced down your throat, then look, I agree it's bad, but from what I've seen, it isn't. However, because that game hasn't done as well as it potentially could or should have, and EA are looking at this potentially being the last ever Dragon Age game, maybe they do need to revisit Anthem. Even if they sell it to somebody else and just can BioWare, if they give it to one of their other companies, like, can you imagine DICE, for instance, making this, or I don't know, somebody who's got more experience in the shooter genre? As long as they kept the core gameplay loop and they didn't change the flying or anything like that, they just upped the looter aspect, then I think they could have something really decent on their hands. I thoroughly enjoyed my time back with the game, and if you did play it and originally thought that's great and you're worried because the servers are going to close, I don't see any indication of that at all. In fact, I would say that as it stands at the moment, they have no indication of doing anything with this game, including shutting it down. And that being said, if they don't shut it down, there's got to be a question why. Why would you keep an active server that you could be using for a different game, for a game like this, when you're not doing anything with it? I think they are seeing whether or not this game maintains a steady audience, even with nothing being done to it. And if they are making sales for, you know, the cosmetics or whatever it might be, then I think there's as good a chance of them restarting and repicking this game up as shutting the servers down. So I'm honestly holding out hope. But to finish this video off, let's face it, I've been rambling a little bit, and I know I have. I've been talking about various different things, including games which aren't even Anthem. But what I'm trying to say is, don't actually give up on this game. I still found it extremely fun and enjoyable to play. The fact that the free play session that I was in had a full set of players is something that's quite interesting so long after the fact they stopped development on it, and it does identify and basically prove that live service games can carry on even with no live service content, and that's exactly what's happening here. The gameplay is really satisfying, good fun, graphically it's quite nice, as I've said before, the story's good, And yes, it could do with some improvement, but bearing in mind most places are selling this game for a ridiculously cheap amount at the moment, I think it's definitely worth A, picking up if you haven't already, or B, pulling off the shelf or dusting out of your library and just giving it another go. With all of the things that are going on in the world at the moment, some mindless mech violence where you're flying around in a massive suit, shooting creatures, and I don't know, just performing some really interesting and fun activities, it's definitely worth a second look. But I'm going to leave this video there. Like I say, it was just a little bit of back down memory lane retro gaming situation for me, and I thought that I would just show you guys what it was like in today's gaming environment, I suppose. Thank you very much for watching though, I really do appreciate it. If you have found this fun and, I don't know, enlightening, please do make sure you click the like button. Subscribe if you are new to the channel, or if you aren't new but haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Leave me a comment down below, let me know what you think. Let me know whether you think they should just close the servers or whether they should update and reinvigorate the game. And also please do share the video with all of your friends in your network so that we can get my channel out as many people as possible. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you for my next video very soon. You all take care. Bye for now.